Hello everyone, my name is Ebony Monet, or Monet the Creator, and I'm back with another amazing video, really prompted for some conversations I've been having the last few days / weeks. And today we're going to be talking about navigating projections during your PhD. So I hope that you're clicking on this video because you're interested in this. You're either experiencing some projections, you don't know what a projection is. That is okay, I got you. I'm gonna go through all that, but stay tuned to learn about more how to navigate these projections. Okay, so a quick disclaimer. I am not saying that the PhD is easy at all. I want people to realize that this is not, and there's a number of videos like similar to this one that I really want to release, but like this is not to say the PhD is easy. This is more so to say that there are ways for you to navigate your PhD curriculum and cultivate it in a way that best works for you and is in alignment with your goals, your career aspirations, everything that you have. It takes a lot of mental strength and motivation to do a PhD, like a lot. You have to really like either the science, the humanities, the engineering, whatever science or whatever research that you're doing, you have to really like it. And lastly, before we get started, every lab, every individual, every postdoc, every PI, every principal investigator, everyone is different. So everyone's gonna have different needs. Everyone's gonna have different struggles that they may have been through, but I'm here to tell you, hopefully, some tips and maybe some red flags or probably some things that you should look out for in order to navigate, like I said, these projections that you might experience during your PhD. So first, I want to define a projection. And not like a projection, like a screen projection. A projection is an estimate or a forecast of a future situation or trend based on a study of present ones. So in other words, it's kind of a prediction of what the outcome might be based on someone's circumstance that's normally based on previous data, previous examples of how it's supposed to go. And I think it's also important to mention that on the psychological side, a projection is defined as a psychological phenomenon where feelings directed towards the self are displaced towards other people. So I think that that's the best, like truly the best description that you can understand it as you internally have something that is very hard, and instead of like finding the best way to deal with it, you might unpurposely like project it onto another individual, or someone may do that to you. So now that we know what a projection is, let's get into whether or not the PhD is right for you. So if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're either a current PhD student interested in what is this PhD, you're dabbling a little bit, and I'm wanting to give you a little bit of information about like picking the PhD as a career or a part or a stepping stone in your career, and how to navigate that. So also another reminder, similar to the disclaimer, the PhD is a very rigorous degree to not be taken lightly. And of course, this depends on your school, it depends on your program, it depends on your admin, it depends on your cohort, it depends on a lot of factors. But nonetheless, it is a very rigorous degree. So once you make the decision that you want to do a PhD, you will really be dedicated to this, depending on what kind of area you're in. 4+ years. Let's just say for 4+ years of your life, you will be dedicated to pursuing higher education again, because I'm assuming you probably already have some type of undergraduate degree or master's degree, something. And I think very important to mention is the skill set that you will learn through the PhD. And honestly, I think this is a good way to look at it, because your PhD allows you to open so many doors. There are PhDs that do everything from just opening a lab, what a lot of people know of, to people that are consultants and they work independently. There are people who work in all types of fields in every little niche, and people need PhD researchers, people that are able to critically think in order to get their business projects working. Or maybe this is a industry job and they are looking for people to just help fact check things. There are definitely opportunities all over the place available for people with PhDs. And these are some of the main skill sets that you will develop during your PhD. So critical thinking and problem solving, that is the #1 thing you will learn how to do for sure. And it's just boiled down to, I mean, one of the biggest things and biggest interests I've always had in my life is problem solving. So I knew that a PhD was something that I was interested in because I realized I just get to do more problem solving, especially in the biosciences, which I love to do. Your ability to take feedback, and most importantly, to not take the feedback personally. Now, feedback and receiving criticism, it is very, very hard. And I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm an expert at receiving feedback, nor giving feedback, because giving and receiving feedback are two different skills. But it is definitely much harder for you to navigate a PhD without being open-minded to feedback and needing to shift gears, and that's actually gonna come a little bit later. But you really need to recognize that okay, this feedback is going to be helping me build my project and try to make it stronger. Not so much as I need to defend what things I believe in regarding my project, and we're gonna circle back around to that little story in just a moment. Another skill that you will develop is the ability to prepare both written and oral assignments. So of course, written grants, written papers, manuscripts, things of that nature. Presentations in a sense of either like your PQE or your preliminary qualifying exam, or your thesis, your final thesis exam. Presentations where you might be traveling, doing poster sessions, all types of things. So training in your ability to communicate what kind of research that you do, and also just doing research. Self-confidence and motivation. So this, I can't remember if this was exactly on the list that I pieced together what things I was gonna put here, but being able to have self-confidence, discipline, and motivation, these are like some amazingly transferable skills. So having self-confidence and discipline in itself is just, that's really gonna help you along your PhD in a number of ways. And that just might be in the way that you present yourself or present your research, or discipline in what time you go into work, or discipline in making sure that you're doing your injections at the same time, for decreasing variability for your experiments, whatever that might look like. Another big benefit of a PhD program, and along with a lot of other things, is project management and organization. So project management is very different in the sciences, because I've also led a lot of student organizations and things of that nature, and that's also a form of project management. A lot of it's very social based and things like that. But whenever you're managing a project where you are the leader of this project, there's multiple moving parts to this project that you have to try to turn at the same time. It's technically the best and most ideal thing to do. That can be very challenging, but the PhD definitely trains you in learning what is your workflow in keeping multiple projects and keeping them going. So, and this is kind of like circling back to the one I mentioned earlier on your ability to take feedback, but adaptability. And I think that this is probably one of the most important. At the end, I have a very important one, but I think this is one of the most important ones, because a lot of the times whenever I hear people struggling or like really having a hard time with their PhD, one common thing that I notice underlying a lot of their concerns, and once again, this is not everyone, but the one common thing I keep hearing is that like, I'm kind of sold on this idea and I don't want to change it. And honestly, it's good to be stubborn, because sometimes you end up running into unbeknownst things. I'm not gonna say that like, don't do the experiment, do the experiment. But I'm saying more so that if you are proposing an experiment and someone says, well, you could also do this instead and it's quicker, it might be a little bit more technically challenging, but at least it'll get you the same data, you might just want to go with that. And it might actually be faster, and it might be the best choice to do. And you really have to be open to, once again, that feedback, but also being adaptable, being able to pivot if you really need to revisit what ideas you have, revisit what experiments you're trying to do, revisit what writing or research or how you want to approach your problem. You really want to make sure you're adaptable and open to new ideas. Another good example of this is just openness to new ideas, and that just comes with science, especially like wet lab science. Sometimes you are met with a unknown problem. Like one summer I did research on zebrafish, and I was supposed to be doing like this it was some loss of function study where these zebrafish were supposed to be mutant. Long story short, the zebrafish weren't mutant, and I spent 5 of the 10 weeks of my time at that lab trying to validate and genetically prove that this is the right animal, and it was not the right animal. And at some point I had to sit down with my lab tech I was working with at the time and say hey, this isn't working and I don't see a point in continue to do this. Do you have any new ideas? Is there anything else that I could potentially do? So sometimes it might be so drastic of a change where it's not so much a part of your project needs to be adjusted, but a whole wing of your project needs to completely change. And that's very hard to do. Of course, scientists are very stubborn people, but sometimes we just gotta suck it up and transition. We gotta pivot, because that pivot might put us years ahead than trying to do the same thing that had not been working already. Another skill that you'll learn is leadership and mentorship. So you'll learn leadership in the laboratory as you just get older in your lab and you become a senior member, and you're learning how to mentor and teach other people the skills that you had to learn at some point in the lab. Those skills are naturally to come, I would say. It definitely depends on your program, depends on your school, depends on how many younger trainees are available, because some graduate schools, for example, don't even have an affiliated undergraduate campus, so they might not ever get an opportunity to mentor unless it's a younger grad student. But then in other cases you might have summer visiting students where they only come for 2 or 3 months, and you kind of set up a short project with them. They help you with a part of your project. You get to get them to get involved in science. You just learn a lot that way, I feel like. So that is another skill set that you will learn while being in a PhD program. And the last skill that you will develop, and I believe the most important skill, is your creativity. So your ability to just think outside the box, your ability to create something new. Because the thing about science that's so amazing, at least one thing I love about it, is the novelty. I will be the most knowledgeable person on my project at a certain point of time, and that's just because no one else in the world is doing my project, and that is a very beautiful and exciting thing. But simultaneously, I gotta get creative, because there's no one else doing it. There's nothing for me to really look at. I literally have to think, okay, there's this other tissue that's very similar, is derived from the same lineage or whatever, and maybe I can find some similarities between these two tissues. And honestly, thinking creatively like that, drawing those connections, that's how you become an awesome scientist, I'm telling you. Because science, at least in my opinion, is all about making connections where originally there may not have been connections. Okay, so as I finish up my skills that you will gain in PhD and trying to think about whether or not the PhD is something right for you, especially with your own career aspirations or what things you're interested in doing, I want to make sure that I emphasize that you are not expected to have all of these skills whenever you matriculate into your program. Not whatsoever. That is the point of the PhD being a training program. I cannot emphasize this enough. You'd be shocked how many principal investigators or how many students approach this as if they're supposed to already have all those skills worked out. And if you did, then you wouldn't need to be in the program. You wouldn't need to do the research. You would already have the skill set and be ready to run a lab. Like, it's something that you have to build. You can't just come out the woodwork with all of the skills and, you know, like, it just don't work like that. And I would like to say that if these are skills, all the skills I just mentioned, if these are skills that you believe would be a part of your career, and that can be any sense of it, like I'm a social media creator right now, and I'm finding ways that all of these skills are transferring right to this camera. So trust and believe, like, you will find ways to make these skills work. But really think about before you're, like, if you're applying for the PhD, or if you're not sure if you want to do a PhD, like, really think about, like, are these skills that I would like to develop? Are these skills that will get me somewhere in the career that I want? Or will this just be something where I'm just kind of stalling for time? Because that's a conversation for another video, but we rather make the hard choices now, have the easy life later, than make the easy choices now and have a much more difficult time later. And maybe in another day, I will explain a little bit more about that little analogy. But I will get on to the next part of the video. Okay, so I talked about what is a projection. I talked about what the PhD entails. And now let's talk about what kind of projections you might run into while doing your PhD. So these projections can look a variety of ways, like a real variety of ways. One of the most common ones, and this is one that I've been talking to a lot of people about, and this kind of prompted this video, is basically what the PhD timeline is. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of a rundown of kind of the story that they tell, at least in the biosciences. My program is 5 to 6 years. So in my program, they typically say something along the lines of this. So your G1 year, you're spending doing rotations and taking classes. So it's a little bit of a discombobulated year because there's a lot going on, you're adjusting, and you haven't joined a lab yet. And then your G2 year, you join a lab, you start working on what your potential project is going to be, you start preparing for your PQE, you might still be taking classes, but you still don't really have a good grasp on things because you're literally trying to figure out what your project is about, do your PQE, and then like get into the next G year. And then G3 is when there's just a slump, and normally there's no, like, you're just kind of stuck because things aren't working, or you're having a hard time with your experiments. And then G4 year, like, you might still be struggling, or you might start getting some breakthroughs. So around G5, you're having a better time, and then you start seeing progress in your DAC. And then around G6, you might be planning on graduating, and you might be trying to get things together. But as you can see, I have kind of like illustrated this path as if like there's just this big chunk of time where we're just kind of in limbo, wondering like, when will things go forward? And maybe like 2 weeks ago, I really started to realize, like, wow, the idea of the G3 slump is a projection. I do not foresee my project having any slump. In fact, I am so excited for my PQE. That's less than a month away. After my PQE, I'm gonna be like, so what can I do to get on? I'm gonna start doing some experiments. I'm practicing dissections and stuff right now. Start collecting some data, start collecting some tissue, start getting some data, and start getting it on. Because I don't see a problem with, as soon as I'm done with my PQE, I'm ready to get on the road. I'm ready to get to the next step. And just to be clear, the PQE, or the preliminary qualifying exam, is an exam that we have to take around our G2 year that takes our classification from just being a PhD student to being a PhD candidate. And once you're a candidate, you're able to start working on your thesis in theory, even though I'm like technically working on that same thing now. But you're able to work on your thesis, and you start having your dissertation advisory committee meetings, and et cetera, et cetera. Like I said, a lot of people really just push this G3 slump. And I had to really sit with myself and say, that's not gonna be me. That's just not gonna be me. I know who I am, and I know that I'm really excited for my project. I know that as soon as my PQE is done, and I'm like done with a lot of this writing and stuff that kind of holds up the science and experiments that I need to do, as soon as that's in the books, oh, we're on a run, baby. Oh, we're on a run. And last week, I actually talked to my PI about this. And I mentioned to her, like, I just don't like how people kind of project onto me like this 5 to 6 year PhD. And not to say that like I'm gonna graduate in 3 years or anything like that, but to say that like that doesn't have to be my narrative, and I don't want to adapt that, because if you get that mindset, then it's gonna happen. That's how manifestation works, y'all, is you adapt a mindset, even if it's false, even if you don't believe in it, and you're in that mindset, you're now manifesting, you're bringing that energy towards you, that energy of things just being stuck and you being confused. That's unfortunately how it works. And as I was talking to my PI about this, she mentioned to me, that a lot of the time she notices students after the PQE lose that motivation and drive because they realize that they really need to start problem solving. And the problem solving here isn't so much just, oh, like my experiment, I gotta do this thing, gotta do this thing. It's more so whenever you hit that roadblock of my mouse genotyping isn't working, my whatever it might be, whenever you hit that roadblock and you don't know necessarily what to do, how much are you able to pivot? Once again, it goes back to that idea of adaptability. Are you able to think around it? Is there something else you can do? What kind of problem solving skills do you need? And that's what I mean by the PhD is like a very rigorous degree. You will adapt and you will learn these skills no matter what if you're in the program. But you do have to realize that the problem solving and being adaptable and all that is extremely important, because after you finish your PQE, it does get a little bit non-directional because you don't have a timeline anymore. You can just take as long as you would like, take an internship, do your abroad, whatever you would like to do. But at the end of the day, if you know that you need to work on this project, then baby, let's get it rolling, because then the faster you get it rolling, the faster you can get out of here. And also, like, a little story time that's so related to this. So as I was like venting about this to my girlfriends, one of them told me that there's someone in her program that is a G3 that just got a Nature publication. So Nature, Science, and Cell, I believe, are like some of the top 3 publishers or journals right now. So if you get published in any of those, so she got a Nature paper, and her DAC committee, or her dissertation advisory committee, told her that she could graduate this May, which would mean, yes, she is a G3 graduating potentially. I don't know if she's actually gonna do it. But nonetheless, that just showed me that it's very possible. The timeline is not fixed. You never know what kind of research or discovery or whatever you might run into. You never know what collaboration you might come up with. But honestly, overall, do not allow the timeline, the projected timeline, the projected timeline interfere with what things you think you can do. Because I've seen too many people now slip into, oh, I don't know what to do, whenever it's all about having that self-integrity and motivation and confidence of, I do know what to do, and even if this isn't working, I can still pivot, I can still attack it from this way. Another very common projection that I've experienced is the PQE experience. So that exam that I was just talking about that I have in just a few weeks. I don't know if complain is really the right word for it, but a lot of people report that they just receive a lot of feedback during their PQE. And honestly, to me, like I just said, see the feedback as, okay, let's get out of here, because the more I take notes, the more I'm able to like take into account some other ideas to make my project go on faster. I don't got no problem with that. I see it as I need to just pivot a little bit. I need to just adjust. And as soon as I'm able to figure out, okay, how can I make this work that is better than an original plan I had, and go from there. But a lot of the people that I speak with, they share the PQE as a negative experience for them. And I understand, I do. Like, I've also been in criticizing S kind of situations where you have to do some type of presentation. And you know, I got some thoughts on PQEs that I need to probably put in another video, but at the end of the day, like, if you have the ability to pick your committee, pick wisely, because there are definitely people who will sought to like make you cry during your PQE, and that is just absolutely insane. And I would not subject myself to that, honestly. Even if someone was an expert in the field and would really help me, I'd rather have them on my DAC and have them help me like building my project along the way versus like being a part of this PQE committee, because sometimes that relationship might not go well. But I should definitely make a video about PQE committees and DAC committees and all those crazy things, because I actually have not done I haven't like started thinking about who I'm gonna put on my DAC, but I do have my PQE committee. But a lot of people report experiencing intimidations, a lot of surprising questions, like sometimes being asked to draw like mechanisms or systems or whatever it is, feedback that's very hard to accept, hard to adjust. Again, like none of these things are a personal attack. At the end of the day, at least like the PI should be this way. Like none of this is a personal attack. They really want you to be as successful as possible, and they're trying to probe and ask you questions now, because whenever it comes time for you to apply for that grant, they're going to be asking the same questions, I promise you. So you really have to figure out a way to change that negative narrative, because like I'm trying to change the narrative. I'm excited for my PQE, as I've been saying, but a lot of people report like just feeling very intimidated and like not knowing how to answer questions. But I think one of the biggest lessons to learn from the PQE as well is just, you don't know everything. And it's okay to not know everything. It's okay if there's holes in your projects. It's more about being able to identify them, and how will you patch those holes? How will you work around that alternative? How will you modify your experimental numbers if something doesn't work out? Like all of that is a part of the PhD experience. I think as well, like it's so important to have a persevering and limitless mindset, because as soon as you start limiting your mindset or like having a hard time trying to push through, it just becomes much harder. Because once again, like the PQE is one of many barriers that stands between like anyone and a doctorate degree. And at the end of the day, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And everyone's not doing it. So like you really need to develop a sense of perseverance, an inner sense of perseverance. And once you have that, like that will really be a gem to hold tight to yourself, because I feel like once you have perseverance and you know who you are as a character, and you know and you're confident, nothing can stop you. I don't even care if your experiments are not working. You will pivot and you will find a way to make it work. Not to mention, like, I feel like sometimes I'm my own biggest critic. I definitely, and maybe that's like a good mindset to have too, because I definitely, like, whenever the end of the semester hit and like I turned in my assignment, and now I'm like revisiting the assignment and having to elaborate on like adding my last parts for my exam, like I literally just went through and highlighted it in a whole bunch of different colors, a whole bunch of comments saying like, don't want this, might want to change this, literally just criticizing and trying to change it around as much as I can, because I know that like some of these things I need help with, some of these things I'm not sure how to address, some of these things I know how it needs to be changed, and I really need to just be able to be open to, all right, this needs to change, and that is okay. This will look better, this will sound better, this will translate better if I change this, versus trying to like be so stubborn and stuck in a certain mindset. Like that really can hurt you. And honestly, there are many other projections of the PhD that you might experience, and like it can show up in many other ways, from your PIs, from postdocs, from other grad students, from all across the board. And one other example that I would give, and this is like, I technically do know like a situation of this, but a situation where maybe a PI is starting a lab, or a PI is trying to get tenure. Tenure is basically permanent employment or like guaranteed employment and payment. And your success is thus their success. Now, what can happen there is, of course, you end up with power dynamics, or you end up with people just being very concerned, being very hands-on, because they're worried about your progress being their progress once again. And I'm not saying that this behavior is acceptable. If you notice something like this, red flag, leave. Like, don't even stay there, because it's not even worth it. But like, PIs will sometimes like dangle like potential publications in front of people's faces. They will dangle like money or like travel opportunities, all types of things. But then like try to manipulate. Like, you just be surprised what kind of things people still do in the professional science world just to be successful. But yeah, there's many other examples of projections. If you have an example of a projection, feel free to leave that down below. I would love to hear it, seriously, because I've been like in my head thinking about this for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I would love to hear what other projections some other people might like to share. All right, so now at this point we have recognized how projections might show up in the PhD. So what do we do? Now what? Developing a good self-development and self-care routine. Know who you are and know what your career goals are. That is my biggest point that I have to say, because once you are able to stand firmly and believe what you believe, then you can't be budged. You see, you know that, oh, this project isn't working. Oh, this lab isn't working. Well, then I need to adjust. I need to pivot. I need to change my project. I need to leave this lab. And you figure out that it ain't about me. It's about getting the science done so I can get on once again. Having self-integrity will propel you so far in this degree, and confidence, and also being able to let your ego not take over. And this is such a big one. You don't have to know everything, just like I said, and honestly, you never will. In fact, I think that the more you start to learn in science, the more you realize you just don't know anything, like at all. And you're like, wow, like I'm an expert in like this little niche of this big, wonderful, massive thing that is life. And I think that that's beautiful, because that means that I'm just a part of a big, gigantic system that works together in harmony. But please, learning how to be confident in your skills, like that absolutely transformed my own experience, because I will say that last year, while I was doing my rotations and things like that, I was very fearful and not very confident about my skills. Now, mind you, I had never done mouse work before, and I was rotating, actually all 3 of the labs had my mouse work, and that's intimidating. And then you just have the commuting, the Boston, all the things. And at the end of the day, like, I had to remember, I know what I know. These are the skills that I need to develop. I'll get better at them with time. Things are not gonna happen overnight. I'm not gonna be perfect at this at first. I'm just gonna have to try my best. And each time you try, each time, even if you gotta ask the lab tech to watch you do it 12 times, like, just try your best. Do your best work, and I promise putting that kind of energy into the universe attracts that kind of energy back to you. So you will be successful. I'm telling you, because I'm speaking from experience. I ain't even like gotten no real metric of success, but I already know I'm gonna be successful. That's the best part. So just like my last video mentions, like, find a lab that is in line with your career or your life plans and ambitions. Cause like, I couldn't imagine being a part of a lab where I couldn't come into my PI and be like, I can't believe this happened on my YouTube channel. And then the next day be like, I can't believe what's happening in the world right now. And then the next day be like, oh, well, these are all the updates I have on my experiments and stuff. Like, literally, I am able to talk about anything with my PI. It's a real blessing, and I'm so glad and blessed to have her. But like, having someone that is supportive of your career goals is like, that's one of the most important things, I'm telling you. Definitely check out my last video for that reason if you need any help in picking a rotation lab / picking a lab, and how to pick a good mentor. So this is one of the biggest pieces of advice I have. Like, this whole video isn't just advice. You are not the person that is giving you the advice. People will always speak on giving advice, giving suggestions from their personal experiences, their background. And that can sometimes be very informative, especially if you have a similar background, but this can also be limiting, because you might realize like, oh, well, if that's their experience, then maybe that'll be mine too, and I can't do X, Y, Z, ABC. But the truth is Like this person has their experiences that they're trying to tell and like give you a little bit of direction and advice on. But you can take any advice the way you would like to. It is exactly what I said it is. Advice. It is not what to do. It is not a to-do list. It is, hey, like I think that it would be good if you didn't teach your second year being a grad student. All right, then I'm not gonna do it. Take that advice. Or if you say, hey, I wanna teach, I'm ready to teach, then do it. You do whatever you think feels and is best for you at that time. Definitely avoid internalizing those thoughts from someone else because it can easily cause you to lose faith in yourself. And if you already had the faith there, it would just be a shame to let that wither away whenever you have fear. Now, if you've never heard this acronym, fake evidence appearing real, fear, like do not let someone else's fear or even your own fears stop you from really pursuing something that like you're excited for, just going for it, even if it might be a little bit more challenging, but you like it, do it. And honestly, enthusiasm not only attracts energies of enthusiasm to you, but it also shows that you're just passionate and that you care about the science. Enthusiastic is one of the most common comments I get, or like characteristics that I get after presentations. People will email me, put in assignments, put in like my grade book, whatever. I'm just so glad, or I just loved how enthusiastic she was about her project. That is what you want people saying about you, because I'm telling you, if you can sell your science, you done did the thing, because it is very hard to sell science to people. Like it is very hard to be able to communicate your science so that it's digestible first, but then second of all, to have an excitement and a thrive and a drive and just wanting to share in that excitement, like that is such a precious thing that not a lot of people are able to do. So if you are enthusiastic about your science, don't be afraid to show that. Like really be proud in who you are as a scientist and what your science may be saying about you. Also, like, trust me, getting people excited about your science pays off. It rubs off on you and you're like, ooh, yeah, I knew I was enthusiastic about my project. But then secondly, like, word goes around. Like, you'd be shocked how much people will just talk about things in other circles, and then people will circle back, or you'll run back into people, or you'll run into some other PI that talked to this PI that knew this PI that, like, you'd just be surprised. Like, people talk in academia. So definitely like keep others interested with your enthusiasm and passion for your science. Okay, so some last and final thoughts for this video. If you have any questions whatsoever about if the PhD is right for you, please reach out to me and ask me about it. Let's talk about it, because I really want more people to have more of a conversation about it than trying to feel like it's either right or wrong to do it. You can be in the middle. You can like the idea of doing the PhD, but maybe want to do something else first. I completely encourage that. You make your own path, and there is no linear path to starting a lab if that is your goal, or going into industry if that is your goal. If you are interested in some one-on-one mentor development, once again, please reach out to me. Like, I'm really like, okay, I'm just gonna share it anyways. I want to become a life coach. And when I say I want to become a life coach, I mean yesterday I have been a life coach. Like I have been helping and trying to like get people to foster better mindsets when it comes to these higher level degrees, and also like these students that are coming for visiting weekends and stuff like that. And like, I would love to help you on your journey. Like it would be my honor to be a part of whatever part of your decision process you might be in, whether that's like actually writing your personal statements, or I have my decisions and I don't know where to pick to go. Like I would love to hear from you and see what you're thinking, because it also helps my own experience too. Science is not easy. Any type of research is not easy. This is not work for the faint of heart. So you really have to make sure you love the science, you love the research, you love the humanities, you love the engineering, you love whatever field it is of research science that you're going into. Because there will be times, and I'm sure there will be times for me too, where things might not work, or you're just really having a hard time with a technique, or maybe a machine's down. But you really have to still want to do the PhD. You can't want to give up. You can't already be struggling to want to do the PhD, and then as soon as something happens, it all comes tumbling down on you. That's the last thing that you would want. And once again, don't choose the PhD just because it's the easy way out. It's definitely not an easy way. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. But it might be an easier choice to make just because that's the options that you have available. But even if you think that that's the best thing for you, quote unquote, it doesn't always have to be. You can choose your own life, y'all. I really want people to like be confident and be outstanding people, because I know people are so brilliant and amazing, and people are making money doing anything these days. So if you're worried about the money, don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the money. I'm telling you, like, you can make anything work. Again, circling back to that one note from the last point, people are going to share advice to you based on their own experience. You take their advice at exactly what it is. You can take it as face value. You can take it as a value you want to add into your life. But really think about like what people are saying to you and whether or not something does or does not apply to you. You do not have to internalize, and you do not have to accept all the things that people tell you along the way. You are not bound to or obligated to follow any advice from anyone else. Every program is very different, and everything that I talked about today will drastically vary between if you're a wet lab scientist, between if you're in humanities. Again, humanities is the example I kept using because I met with one of my humanities friends today. But as long as you do your best, nothing can stop you. I'm telling you. I even know people who have had hard times during their PhD, but have developed and shown that they have the skills of a PhD and were still able to graduate without having that concern of like, oh, I didn't publish, oh, I didn't this, I didn't that. It's okay. Like, you still did your best. You're showing that you have these skills. It's not about the measure of or metric of success in the PhD is very ambiguous, and it depends on what you say success is. I believe success is just feeling good and doing what I'm doing. So I'm being successful as far as I'm concerned. Thank you so much for watching. If you got this far in the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share with me if you have any projections that you've experienced, if you have questions that you would like to ask, if you have anything that you want to talk to me about, you want to meet with me one-on-one, I would love to do it. Please reach out. My email is down in the description box below. Once again, like, comment, subscribe. This has been Monet the Creator, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.